All right. Sorry about that. If there's a little bit of video from before, I had a blackout. So or like a 1 minute blackout. So okay. So carbon dioxide transport. Carbon dioxide is dissolved in plasma. Okay. That is about 10% roughly. As monoamino hemoglobin attached to amino acid and hemoglobin, that's about 20%, but most of it is as bicarbonate ion. Okay, so there's an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Okay, and that does this reaction. So it takes water and carbon dioxide into H2CO3 bicarbonate. Okay. Carbonic acid. Okay, so the carbonic acid is a weak acid and will associate with bicarbonate and H plus. Okay, this is what makes carbon dioxide acidic. This is why Coke has a pH of 2. Okay, the little bubbles of CO2. Nope. Okay, once the bicarbonate ion is formed in the red blood cell, it diffuses into the plasma. Okay, the H plus in the RBCs attached to hemoglobin and chloride. Okay, the exchange of bicarbonate out of the and chloride in is called a chloride shift. Okay. All right. The bonding of the H plus to hemoglobin lowers the affinity of O2 and helps with unloading. So think about it this way: the places where you're making a lot of carbon dioxide, you're going to have high, H pluses. So H pluses are going to bind to hemoglobin, and that's going to unload the oxygen. So you're going to unload oxygen and to the places where they're making a lot of carbon dioxide. So wherever you're whenever you're undergoing more reaction to make carbon dioxide, you bring in more oxygen. Okay. Okay, in pulmonary capillaries, the increased oxygen level favors the production of oxyhemoglobin, which forces the H plus to dissociate, which forces this whole reaction backwards. Okay, so now you turn it all the way back to carbon dioxide again, and carbon dioxide now diffuses out. Okay, so you're back to breathing out carbon dioxide. Okay. All right. Principles of acid-base balance. Okay. So maintained within a constant range by the lungs and kidneys. So we have a very narrow range of pH. So from 7.35 to 7.45. We can't really go a lot past this actually. Okay. So this is where carbonic acid acts as a buffer. Okay. So carbonic acid can be converted into a gas and exhaled. Okay. So it can be a volatile acid. So we can remove acid and we can remove an acid and make base. So like this is our buffer system. Okay. Okay. Bicarbonate as a buffer. So bicarbonate ion is a weak buffer, therefore the major buffer in the blood. So anytime so anytime we have excess H plus, we can combine with the bicarbonate and form H H2O CO3, and then we can actually go one step further and breathe out the CO2. Okay. But obviously that cannot last forever because we'll eventually breathe out the CO2. Okay. Okay. The kidneys help deal with this by releasing H plus into the urine. So this frees up the bicarbonate to do more. Okay. Okay, acidosis is when the pH level drops below 7.35. Okay, there are two types of acidosis: respiratory acidosis, okay, caused by hypoventilation, not enough CO2 is released. Okay, or metabolic acidosis, which is caused by excessive production of acids or the loss of bicarbonate, diarrhea. Okay, alkalinosis, okay, is when the pH rises above 7.45. Okay, respiratory alkalinosis is caused by hyperventilation. Okay, the blow off of CO2, so H plus decreases, pH increases. Okay, metabolic acid alkalinosis caused by inadequate production of acids or overproduction of bicarbs and loss of digestive acids from vomiting. Okay. Okay. Okay, and so Henderson-Hasselbalch equation. So that's the equation. Okay, so again, if there's more of this, then this goes, the pH goes higher. Okay, if there's more of this, the pH goes lower. Okay, ventilation so can compensate for the metabolic component. Okay, so the person with metabolic acidosis can hyperventilate and go into respiratory alkalinosis. So you can compensate for each other. Okay, a person with metabolic alkalinosis will hypoventilate, and that builds up CO2, which lowers the pH. So you can balance each other out. Okay. Okay, ventilation during exercise. Okay, ventilation. So the sensory nerve activity from exercising muscles stimulates respiration via spinal reflexes or brainstem respiratory centers. Okay, this is known as a feed-forward response. Okay, you like even when you before you actually need more oxygen or need to get rid of more CO2, you are already breathing harder. And because so this is a reflex. It's like, oh, I'm gonna exercise. Oh, okay, if I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna need more oxygen. And you do this even before you actually like need the CO2 get lost or the oxygen. Wow. Okay. Okay. So here's a mechanism or an exercise. I didn't realize I wasn't talking about this. So make sure you go over this slide. This slide actually has all the information on it. It actually explains things rather well. Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize that was a different thing. Okay. Okay, so that's the neurogenic mechanism, the humoral mechanisms, the blood mechanisms. Rapid deep breathing continues after exercising stops because you have to basically pay off your oxygen debt and other things. Okay, so the PCO2 and pH level differences at sensors. Okay, so. Okay, so the lactate threshold. Ventilation doesn't deliver enough O2 at beginning exercise, so you go into anaerobic respiration, and you start. After a few minutes, the muscles can receive enough oxygen because again, you're now pumping harder. Okay, your heart is pumping harder, your lungs are breathing harder, and now you're getting enough oxygen in. Okay. Okay, if heavy exercise continues, so lactic acid fermentation will return. Okay, so the lactic threshold occurs when 70% of the maximum oxygen intake uptake is reached. This is due to the aerobic limitations of the muscle. Okay, you can only get so much oxygen to the muscle. Okay. Okay, endurance exercise increases mitochondria. Remember, mitochondria are the things that actually use oxygen and Krebs cycle intermediate, so they can process oxygen and supply oxygen faster, which gives you more energy, which gives you more endurance. Okay. Okay. The acclimatation to a high altitude. There's a reason why there's a lot of marathoners and people who train in Denver and other high altitude places is because of these three things. Okay. Okay. In high altitudes, there's less oxygen in the atmosphere. Okay. So you can see the at 1 mile high, this is 1 mile, you're at 95% saturation. So, and your PCO2 is a little lower as well. Okay. So you breathe harder, you increase ventilation. Okay. Okay. Okay, so the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. So oxygen affinity decreases, and simply there's less of it in the atmosphere. A higher portion of the oxygen is unloaded. This occurs due to increased production of 2-3 dpg, and then at extreme high altitudes. Okay, so the affinity for oxygen will increase again. But the most important thing is this. Okay, the kidney cells sense decreased partial pressure of oxygen and increase EPO. Okay, EPO gets you more hemoglobin and red blood cells. Okay, the bad thing about it is more red blood cells can lead to pulmonary hypertension and more viscous blood, and that makes the heart work harder to pump the same blood. Okay. Okay, so high altitude sickness. Okay, if you ever been to those places, they leave you at base camp for a couple of weeks to adjust, and this is why. Okay. Okay. All right. So that ends this thing here.